Hello and welcome to another episode of Mystery Red Reads. I am your host, Mystery Red. This is my disclaimer. This beta read in concrete is at the author's request. The video is for learning purposes. Today we're doing a beta read in concrete of a memoir. We're looking at chapter 6 of No-Ant-5039. I always call them ants, so I had to get the number part. Sorry. Okay. We're looking at their memoir. We are on chapter 6. I will include links to my other reads for Ant in the description below. I did not read chapter 2, and we did a private read, I believe, for chapter 4. So you will not find those in my in the description or anywhere on my YouTube. So here we go. We're looking at chapter 6. Me again, Mr. Tender. Skin and bones, particles and petals. Okay, I'm going to muse over this for a second because we had a couple chapters back another line kind of like that. I'm kind of wondering, it's not so much a title unless maybe, okay, so we're writing them as letters. Oh, I'm wondering if it might substitute in place of chapter, or even like if the chapters get titles. I'm wondering how else this could be used. Like, I don't dislike it. I'm just wondering, I don't know that it fits into the letter, so I'm kind of wondering how else you could use it. You could potentially give your chapters titles, but then you have to do it to all of them. And I've seen you do this one other chapter. I don't think we did it last chapter. And I think on one chapter I mused over, you actually addressed the guy directly rather than giving him a clever little title there. Musings, those are all musings. We're going to keep going. Me again, Mr. Tender, skin and bones, particles and petals. We had taken a few hours earlier. The blissful breeze on my skin wrapped around me and rode waves up my chin, splashing my cheeks before barreling over my forehead and into the leaves above. Particles whizzed through the air, collided and bounced off each other. Under my flesh they vibrated, craving the freedom of those on the outside. Goosebumps mapped the terrain of my arms, and I could feel every single one, aimless. We split our time between your sun-drenched room and the overgrown grounds. In, out, too hot, too cold. Is this or am I still rolling? I asked. You smiled. Does it matter? We walked along the garage past the wind-tattered bird of paradise to the orchard. Several dwarf fruit trees grew around a magnificent yellow plum. You'd wander off toward the gate, and I stood across from the trunk of the tree with my arm extended to rest against its bark. Plain as day, my flesh vibrated. Molecules broke free from the containment of my solid human form and flew away in lines, smacking into each other and redirecting without a care. I'm going to pause for a second. Let's see. We have vibrated twice. Okay, so we've got vibrated twice, and there was a part up here where you were describing that you could feel the goosebumps. All right, goosebumps mapped the terrain of my arms, and I could feel every single one. So when I read that, there's nothing wrong with it, okay? I want to assure you that. But when I read it, my brain said, goosebumps mapped the terrain of my arms. And I could feel every single one. And when I read and I could feel every single one, I was like, what, like the hair on your arms? Because so commonly we refer to the hairs on our arms. And I was like, no, they just mentioned goosebumps. Okay, like literally the line before they mentioned goosebumps. But I think because we say we feel goosebumps. But when we talk about the sensations on our skin, we typically describe the hairs on our arms, feeling them lift up, or feeling, sensations across the hairs. So my brain probably went for the most common thing. Despite having read one thing, it goes to the thing it goes to the sensation most commonly described. That is what I'm trying to articulate. Okay, so there's nothing wrong with what you did. It was very creative and different. I'm explaining the path of the brain based on repetition, and we're going to observe that and just note it, and we're going to keep going. Now, with regards to the vibration, Particles whizzed through the air, collided, and bounced off each other. Under my flesh, they vibrated, craving the freedom of those on the outside. You could probably just use a different word that means the same thing in one of the two places. Pick which one you want to keep. You've also described your flesh. You might try skin. I tend to say flesh a lot too, especially when I've got a poetic type prose similar to your own, a rhythm, a cadence, a very distinct voice. You may flop one of those out for skin. Those are simple fixes. So I'm not going to go on. I'm just going to move on. All right, and let's see. Molecules broke free from the containment of my solid human form and flew away in lines, smacking into each other and redirecting without a care. Shape-shifting in silence, I felt so connected. Pieces of me in the air and in the tree, the gray bark and my soft skin becoming one. That's a contrast. Interesting. I pictured this on a larger scale. Everything all the time, interconnected in ways I failed to see before. I wore that V-neck magenta dress with nothing underneath. The waffle sweater material clung to my body in all the right places, and the frayed chiffon trim flirted with my kneecaps. I don't know how much time elapsed in the orchard, overlooking the ocean below. The low tide exposed jagged shelves of rocks jutting out from the base of the cliff. Despite the sharp contrast in color and form, the simple lighthouse seemed as natural to the rocks and the waves as my fingers to my hand. I'm kind of right up here when you described the dress. It seems almost out of place because you're describing the sensation of the high. And if you want to, and it seems like you're trying to give me the visual of what you look like when this is happening. And that's fine. My suggestion would be to tailor your description of the dress with the sensations you experience wearing the dress while high. And then it's going to flow more seamlessly. As it reads, it's not super jarring. It's obviously a new thought. But I kind of have this whole, you're high, like feeling all these things. And then all of a sudden, we've got a description of your dress. And I know you're trying to paint the scene for me, and there's nothing wrong with your description, but your description is going to fit in even more if you tie it into the high. Like, what were you thinking of the dress, or what did you feel from the dress that you were wearing? And you can work that description of it in there with those sensations, and it's going to flow along with your high. I don't know how much time elapsed in the orchard because we're still in the high, overlooking the ocean below, the low tide, exposed jagged shelves. Like, you didn't have a moment of clarity and then suddenly think of your dress. Let's see. The low tide, exposed jagged shelves of rock jutting from the base of the cliff. Despite the sharp contrast in color and form, the simple lighthouse seemed as natural to the rocks and the waves as my fingers to my hand. I'm going to roll with that. We're going to keep going. Encasing the hilltop fruit trees, calla lilies shot up in clumps of green spears. The famous funeral flower, crowned with pure white blooms, fashioned an elegant fence line. A memory of those blossoms twisted inside of me. You had backed your van under the branches and converted the custom benches into a bed. With your mom flying in from Alabama, you fixed up your room for her, and we were excited to van camp under the waxing moon. I could always tell when you were on the phone with your mama, as it brought out a touch of twang in your voice and a genuine happiness. Making a good impression on her was important to me, and I still can't believe I let you talk me into the lines of the night before we picked her up from the San Francisco airport. Actually, oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. Oh my gosh. You did that right before you met his mom. Oh no. No. I'd be like, no, sir. No, sir. I'm not about to meet mama like that. No. Okay. Oh my goodness. Reader musing. That was a reader thought. Oh my gosh. I'm squirming for you right now. Okay, here we go. Actually, it happened to be St. Patrick's Day, and we leaned into our Irish heritage, proud of our whiskey tolerances. Been there. My hand was still in a cast from breaking my ulna, doing God knows what in a blackout back in February. We watched the sun mingle for a moment with the calla lilies before melting into the horizon, kicking off a toxic all-nighter. Sleepless, fluctuating back and forth from sloppy and sloppier lines. Your mood plunged into depression. With the weekend looming, more was the only way you could combat the hours. Aw, it's so sad. Not wanting to miss out, I matched you line for line, paired with shots of Jameson's from the van. To this day, I carry the guilt of meeting your mom strung out in a cast I couldn't honestly explain, sneaking off to and fight with you in front of an audience of flowers. Oh, that sounds hot. That weekend led you to your first meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous. 43, and your mom escorted you to a church that Monday following the chaos. And this was the weekend I met my future mother-in-law. What? Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. That was problematic. Whiskey, on the other hand, expanded our thinking. What a mess. That's just, okay. Okay, hang on. Not wanting to miss out, I matched you. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. So, to this day, I carry the guilt of meeting your mom messed up in a cast I couldn't honestly explain. Okay. So one thing I'm thinking as I'm reading this is I'm telling myself, okay, I'm not going to get dialogue because it's a memoir unless, because of the format. So I'm wondering what the conversations were between the two of you. I also want to note that I've kind of wondered since the beginning what he looked like. I don't know that you kind of gave that to us even back in chapter 5. I kind of missed that part, and I kind of wondered it then, but I'm wondering it still because he's been around for 2 chapters, so I kind of wanted a visual of him. Not wanting to miss out, I matched you. To this day, I carry the guilt of meeting your mom messed up. Okay. I'm guessing, like, maybe are you fighting because this is stressful from meeting her in this situation? Did one of you say something inappropriate, act a certain way that 43 and your mom escorted you to church that Monday following the chaos? Okay, well, church is on Sunday. Unless she's done called somebody and been like, we gotta go get you some help. Not wanting to miss out, I matched you line for line, paired with shots of Jameson's from the van. To this day, I carry the guilt of meeting your mom in a cast I couldn't honestly explain and sneaking off to fight in an audience of flowers. That weekend led you to your first meeting. Okay, yeah. So whatever happened here, okay? I'm guessing that you guys must have been, you said you were doing this in front of an audience of flowers, but obviously some shenanigans went down in front of mom. That mom is like, no, sir, and you're going straight to here. Okay? So I feel like I want to know at least one example of one of those fights. Okay. And I'm trying to figure out where to tell you to put it. I'm guessing. I like how you led into this, though, so I wouldn't change that. I think you're giving it to us here. What happened? Maybe right here is your opportunity. Right here to tuck in an example. I don't know how you want to show it. You said, I don't want to mess with your voice, so I hesitate to recommend too much, but I can tell you what it is I'm wanting. How's that? I'm going to go with that. What I'm wanting, probably right here is where I think I'd recommend it, is to give me, your reader, some context for one of these fights. It's fine to say that this went on, okay? Because you're sneaking off to do it. It sounds like it happened more than once. But we know what you're doing, but I kind of want, something happened in front of mom. What happened in front of mom that drove her to this point? What were you doing, or what was he doing that he basically embarrassed / outed himself of what he's been, something happened that he wasn't acting right, and she was like, what the heck is wrong with you? No way. No, sir. No way, no how. When mom just made that decision, what happened when that led mom to make that decision? What happened in front of her? I want to know that. And I think right here is where you can put it. I can already see it isn't going to go well. You're meeting her, and then something bad's going to happen because of the state of mind you guys are in when this introduction is made. Also, I like that you're showing this, because this shows that this relationship is not healthy. It's passionate and it's escapist. And then you've got the meeting of you're going to meet mom, and you're not even able to be clean or straight or sober long enough to meet her. So that's a very raw let in right there. That's very revealing. It's very showing of the situation. So good job. Good job on that. Yes. So right there is where I want to know what happened in front of mom. And then this was the weekend I met my future mother-in-law. So now I'm wondering, like, was that her, or is there someone else? I'm guessing it was her. So did you end up marrying Mr. Tender? Or I almost wondered, did something else happen over the weekend and you met someone else? And that person turned out to, like, somehow you end up, I guess it must have been her, logically. But my brain did wonder. Because, there's a lot going on. There's a lot of chaos and a lot going on. So, I almost wanted to say, and this was how I met my future mother-in-law. Yeah. I think, to be perfectly clear, that it's this woman, without any... Wow, what the heck happened with that little arrow popped up? Without any shadow of a doubt. And this was the weekend and this was how I met my future mother-in-law. That was problematic. Whiskey and acid, on the other hand, expanded our thinking. I'm curious. So you liked the high of one and not the other. Interesting. Okay. We're going to keep going. We've got little dots, so something is changing. Let's keep going. The crunch of twigs and gravel announced your approach, pulling me out of my cringeful memory. I think there's an E here. Oh, it's telling me that it's misspelled, but it's not making a suggestion. Isn't that lovely? I'm betting it needs an E right there. Let me just tuck one in and see what it says. Yep, that solved it. I'm not going to make a change on your document, though. All right. The crunch of the twigs and gravel announced your approach, pulling me out of my cringeful memory. Together, we made our way to the bench by the front porch for a smoke. Spiders had strewn webs all along the metal banister. Do you remember the determined hummingbird? She came right up, no more than 2 feet away, to collect webbing for her nest. Hovering suspended in the air, she would snag threaded clumps in her needled black beak. Her rapid wing beat surged, expelling more energetic particles full throttle in our direction. The bird's head was the same shade of gray as the bark on the plum tree. I could almost feel her rapid heartbeat in my own chest. Her presence pulsed oxygen through my spirit. Can I cut you off a slice of peach? You offered, fragrant juice dripping down your pocket knife. Nah, I'm not hungry, but I'll have another shot, I said, distracted. I reached to put out my cigarette, careful to maintain my gaze on the hummingbird. Look how hard she's working. When she turned her head, the gray lit up fuchsia and deep green, the iridescent sheen like oil on asphalt. Mesmerizing. Beautiful. That is beautiful. Okay. I mean, all of this is tragic. I'm so sorry. But at the same time, your writing is beautiful. Let's be clear. Okay. Let's keep going. We got another couple of dots. I'm guessing you're just showing us little glimpses of moments. Back on your bed, I slipped off the dress. With your closet door's full-length mirrors, my reflection took me by surprise. My shoulder blades stuck out like wings, and the outline of my rib cage hung off my spine. I eased back into the pillows, hoping you wouldn't notice my bones as pronounced as I had. After approaching the foot of the bed, you lowered yourself onto your stomach. The mattress twisted into a grin beneath your weight. Let me find out if I can find out if I can read this out loud or not. Hang on. We are not going to read that out loud, which is why it was in a different color. I did pause to read it. I had no problem with anything it said. I have no suggestions. It looked really good. We're going to keep going. We're going to keep going. I loved how you had strategically hung crystals at different lengths to catch the sun rays and transform them into rainbow prisms. This was one of those moments. The afternoon sun came through with with a fierce brightness. Okay, let me try that again. This was one of those moments the afternoon sun came through with a fierce brightness. I reached for my sunglasses to cover my eyes. In moments of intimacy like that, I couldn't exist in my skin to hold eye contact. But knowing you could no longer see my eyes when your gaze roamed up across my body allowed me to give in to a deeper relaxation. I'm coming across another blue section I can't read out loud, but I'm going to pause and read it, see if I have any suggestions. And before I do that, I think it is so interesting that this line right here, to me, sticks out. In moments of intimacy like that, I couldn't exist in my skin to hold eye contact. And as a reader, I immediately want to know why, or I notice it, and I'm like, that is an observation. That line stands out. And I have to wonder why that is. And I feel like, I'm not saying give it here. I'm not suggesting that. I'm thinking if we give our reader thoughts in all the other places along the way that I have prompted you to kind of tuck them, and we start getting your thoughts towards yourself, like what were your thoughts towards yourself? And I like this line a lot. As a victim of violence, and that's not what this is. This is not healthy. Like I said, it's escapism, but at the same time, as a victim of that one thing we've discussed, I immediately know why I immediately suspect that is part of why you cannot do this, why you cannot hold eye contact. So like you can enjoy the sensations, but you can't fully surrender yourself. Not really. I don't know if that line just sticks out to me because I've experienced that, or if I want it to hit every reader that way. And I kind of wonder, I guess anybody that's watching could comment if they caught that line and thought it stuck out to them. And if it did, why did it stand out to you? I don't know that I have a suggestion. I just want to say that this line stuck out to me. I think that's what we're going to go with for right now. I also am going to continue to say that, like, as you tuck in, as you surrender what your thoughts were in the moments, as you experience them, it's going to absolutely immerse your reader throughout this entire memoir. But in exposing those thoughts is a vulnerability. So there's that. But all of this is very revealing anyway. So we're going to keep going. I'm going to pause to read this little section and make sure that I don't have any suggestions for it. One tiny suggestion. Instead of using this word, sensation, what is that sensation? Is that sensation joy? Is it ecstasy? Is it sweet? Is it sharp? Is it soft? What does this sensation feel like? You don't have to change anything else around it. Just describe the sensation with a word, right? Maybe in place of the word sensation. And I think you got it. We're gonna keep going. I opened my eyes, head tilted back in the pillows, observing the straight angles of the wood altar hanging on the wall above. Everything spun, slowing down only a little as I concentrated on the grains in the wood. On this particular weekend, you had filled the center with a jar of farewell to spring flowers. When I got home and unpacked my suitcase the following afternoon, I found a stowaway petal that must have fallen inside, a keepsake of that weekend, skin and bones and particles and petals. And even now, 6 years later, I toss seeds out every spring to have a sentimental summer bouquets. That's beautiful. So beautiful. There was something unnervingly impactful about that hummingbird building her nest to ensure her future. A few years ago, Lindsay and I signed a lease on a great apartment behind the fairgrounds, close proximity to the beach. It was a test of our friendship, to say the least. She was falling head over heels for that guy I had caught her with at a happy hour back in August. He was older, his job a true career. Needless to say, she was never around. They went to Hawaii for spring break, and I joked, "Don't get knocked up." Funny thing, cells were already rapidly dividing when she boarded that flight. By midsummer, we would terminate our lease for her to build her nest with James, and by the following New Year, there was an invitation to attend her baby shower. It was an 11 o'clock Sunday brunch, and I had every intention of going. We even woke up early that morning. I had that familiar feeling. It wasn't a hangover. More likely, I was still drunk from the night before. Hair of the dog, you offered. I think we need a comma right there. Yeah, definitely. I don't have to leave until 9. Soon I would text Lindsay some combination of lies about the flu. Friendships, acquaintances, people all around me were trending towards save the dates, registries, revising the resumes, and discussing interest rates. Not that I didn't want those things, but my reality was so far removed. I would slip the baby shower invitation into the 41 quart under the bed box with the rest of my unopened mail to deal with, well, later. Or never. Back in grade school, I had a teacher that assigned us to write about what we wanted to be when we grew up. Amongst a room full of veterinarians, teachers, presidents, and doctors, I wrote about being a mom. The irony was not lost on me to imagine with that the young version of myself, practicing her penmanship, severely disappointed to know her fate, a professional only at blotting out consciousness. There was that third grade version of me, another frantic, throwing rocks at my car window, one living by the fairgrounds and one with the woman under the plum tree. We are me. Okay, so this paragraph, this chapter is beautiful. This paragraph is so beautiful, I got choked up, but at the same time, something broke your rhythm a little bit down here. And so I want to look closer at that. Back in grade school, I had a teacher that assigned us to write about what we wanted to be when we grew up. Amongst a room full of veterinarians, teachers, presidents, and doctors, I wrote about being a mom. The irony was not lost on me to imagine that the young version of myself, practicing her penmanship, severely disappointed to know her fate, a professional only at blotting out consciousness. Okay, hang on. What is it? This works, but it doesn't. The irony was not lost on me to imagine that that young version of myself, practicing her penmanship, the irony was not lost on me to imagine that young version of myself practicing her penmanship would one day be severely disappointed to know her fate. A professional only at blotting out consciousness. I think I'm missing some words right here. Like, would one day be severely disappointed to know her fate, or would have been severely, you don't want to say have been though, Grammarly does not like that. There's reasons, I'm not going to dive into it. Would have been, because we're looking back. The irony was not lost on me to imagine that young version of myself practicing her penmanship would be severely disappointed to know her fate. Yeah, I think we need a would be right here. A professional only at blotting out consciousness. There was that third grade version of me, another frantic, in contrast to another frantic, there was that third grade version of me. Something's missing here too. Yet another frantic. Okay, if you're trying to show two different versions of your third grade self, where you had just described one version of your third grade self to another version of yourself, frantic and throwing rocks at my car window, you're seeing yourself throwing rocks at your own car window? There was that third grade version of me. Yet another frantic, throwing rocks at my car window. And still another one living by the fairgrounds. And finally one with the woman under the plum tree. We were all me. Yeah, I think if you tuck some little yet still, some transitional words in there, that's going to come out beautifully for you. It'll get a little bit long. You could probably break it up in little statements if you wanted to. And it'll work for you still because it'll be a build. There was that third grade version of me, period. Or another, frantic, throwing rocks at my car window. Or the one living by the fairgrounds. And finally, the one under the plum tree, the woman under the plum tree, we or me. So you could play with that a little bit and still keep those beautiful words and that build. But Yeah, so I had a lump in my throat. I got choked up in there because anytime we look back at the innocence of ourselves, I get very emotional. When we compare who we are and how we got to where we are, and we look back on where we came from, I'm always sad for that child. So, lots of feels here. You've got me caught up in it. I'm going to stop myself from going down to 7. Your writing is beautiful. I'm caught up in your story. Still turning pages. I believe you have booked me for chapter 7. You have. So readers, stay tuned for that. And I will see you guys next time on Mystery Read Reads.